Thank you. I'm going to tell you guys a little story. My name is Steve Wenger. I was born in Madison, raised in Grafton, and I raised my family in Slinger. And 3 years ago, my wife and I relocated out to Arizona because, believe it or not, we got tired of the cold. So,
Whoops.
So, sorry about that. So 3 years ago, we relocated out to Arizona, which is where we live now. For my work, I work up on the Navajo reservation, and anybody that watched the Navajos were hit really hard with COVID. So that was a big portion of why I chose to get the vaccine. Prior, my lifestyle was, my wife and I are avid hikers. We do a lot of hiking. We play pickleball. For anybody that doesn't know what pickleball is, it's kind of a cross between ping pong and tennis. So we play a lot of ping pong, or a lot of pickleball, ride our Harley. We're out all the time. We're very big into the outdoors. My life and my wife's life did a 180-degree turn on May 18th. And May 18th was the day I got my vaccine. My first symptoms appeared on the 25th, and it was basically my legs felt like they were loaded with cement. I just had problems walking. I started falling, started tripping. I had problems getting out of chairs, and finally it got so bad on the 14th of June, I went into the ER, and my wife brought me to the front door, and I essentially rolled out of the car and crawled on my hands and knees into the ER. That was how I got into the ER. They did the spinal taps, they did MRIs, they did X-rays, CT scans, and finally I was diagnosed with a condition called Guillain-Barré. I spent a month at that hospital, and it was Banner Hospital in Sun City, Arizona. I felt I was going nowhere. I was getting worse. By the end of June, I was completely paralyzed from the waist down. Couldn't move anything from the waist down. I got out of that hospital on the 14th of July, and I didn't want to go back to it. The doctors weren't that good. The neurologist team was terrible. I felt they were spitballing my condition. They weren't taking my condition serious, as I guess is a good way to describe it. I was asking for tests to be done, and they weren't getting done. It just felt like they were doing more spitballing than diagnosing. So on the 17th of June, or of July, I went to Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and I checked into the Mayo Clinic. And the Mayo Clinic redid all the tests that Banner did, and then a whole bunch extra. The first 7 days I was there, all they did was tests. Lumbar punctures. You guys have had MRIs? Imagine spending 4.5 hours in that tube for one MRI. 4.5 hours. And then having to go back the next day and another 2.5 hours in the MRI tube. CT scan after CT scan. I had 2 surgeries done, one to implant a port in my neck, another to take a section of nerve out of my ankle. The traditional treatments that I was getting for Guillain-Barré were not producing the results that were being expected by the doctors. Whether or not that's just because I had a unique case, or whether it was because of the vaccine. Like I said, I spent 28 days the first time in the hospital, And in that 28 days, like I said, I was paralyzed from the waist down. I started losing strength in my arms and my hands. They did a process called plasma exchange. And they hook you up to a machine through the port in your neck. They draw your blood out. They run it through a filter to take all the antibodies out, and they replenish it with like a substitute. They did that 5 times, and all total, they take 5 liters of plasma out of your system every time. So it was 25 liters of plasma that they changed out in my system over the course of, I want to say, 7 days. I got discharged out to rehab after that. They thought my condition had plateaued, and I was in the rehab for 3-4 days. And I was eating breakfast one morning, and I went to pick up my fork, and by this time, my right arm was completely paralyzed. I couldn't even move my right arm. My left arm I had maybe 20-25% of my strength left. I went to pick up my fork, and I couldn't pick up my fork. Physically could not pick up my fork. My cell phone was too heavy. I could not pick up my cell phone. By this time, the nerve that they had taken out of my leg, which had been sent off for biopsy, they came back with a diagnosis, and I had, it's called CIDP, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. And basically what that is that is the most severe form of Guillain-Barré. I had been back at Mayo. They sent me back to Mayo. I was there maybe 3 days. And after that 3 days, I was paralyzed from the neck down. I could move nothing below my neck. And I laid like that for almost a month. They had me on a chemo drug called, it's a chemo drug, but it's not a real strong one. It's called rituximab. And that ultimately is what turned the course for me. I got out of the hospital on September 21st. So I spent a total of 98 days in the hospital. And for all the nurses and the RNs out there, I owe everything I've got. And the reason that I'm sitting here is because of the nurses and the RNs. There were a lot of nights. Is that right?
We love you, brother.
There were a lot of nights when the nurses were there for me to cry on their shoulders, and they were there to cry on my shoulders. They helped me through the darkest nights, the scariest nights of my life. There were nights where I had to be put on supplemental oxygen. I got within a whisper of having to go on ventilator because my respiratory system was shutting down. The nurses, again, were there. They fed me, they bathed me, they dressed me. For a month, I was helpless, and it was the nurses, the RNs, the LPNs, it was all of them that got me through that horrific month, worst month of my life. So to on to a more cheery note. So like I said, I got out on the 21st of September. By the time I got out, I had lost all my muscle mass. I had no muscle left. For me to lift my arm like this, that took everything I had. Took everything I had to do that. So I got out and I got into the rehab, And my goal was just to build upper body strength back. At this point, all I wanted to do was go home. And it took me 2 weeks to get my upper body strength back to the point where they would send me home. So when I went home on the, I want to say it was the 30th, around the 30th, just before, I think it was just before Halloween. No, I'm sorry, no. Beginning of October, my bad, beginning of October. So I've got my daily routine now is, as I go to the gym 5 days a week, and I work out 3 to 4 hours a day. And in that time frame, I've been able to build back some of my muscle, build back my legs. On October 18th, I was able to, for the first time, I had just got done working out at the gym. I was wiped out. I was in my chair. I was rolling back to the locker room, and there was just like this half wall. And I looked at the half wall. I thought, you know what? I wonder if I can stand. I wonder if I can just stand. And I wheeled over to the wall, kind of grabbed down, pulled myself up, and I could stand. So October 18th. Landmark day for me, a landmark day. So that was a Friday. We went back on the Monday, and I was with my daughter. My daughter's an RN, and I owe a lot of this to my daughter as well. My daughter lives in Menominee Falls, and she uprooted her family. They all moved out to Arizona, and they're living out there for the next 9 months, helping me with my recovery. So I owe a lot to my daughter. So on Monday, Aaron and I go to the fitness club, and Aaron always starts out on the treadmill, and I always start out on the recumbent bike. And I was just kind of getting my legs working, and I thought, you know what, maybe I should try the treadmill. So I went up and I got up and I stood on the treadmill for fear. I was terrified I was going to land on my face, and put it on the slowest speed, and I was able to walk my first steps. And I've just I've moved up from there, and I keep getting stronger, I keep working harder, and I've gotten to the point now where if I get up, I can get out of my chair and I can kind of wobble myself around. I get around the house with a walker. Anytime I go out and I go anywhere or any distances, I always take my chair. But so that's where I am today. But the big question is, why am I here? Other than to tell my story, we're in a unique situation. And while I was in the hospital, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of fear. I spent a lot of nights where I was absolutely terrified. I was terrified if this was, am I going to live through this? Am I going to make it through this? The night the nurse came crashing through the first time and put me on oxygen, that was probably one of the scariest nights of my life. That was the night where I thought I was going on the respirator. That was the most terrifying night of my life. I've never, ever had a night like that before. I hope I never do again. So to cope with that stress, I started blogging. And I started posting those on my Facebook page. And as my hands got worse and I couldn't blog it anymore or type it, I started going to voice to text. Well, then it got to the point where I couldn't hold my phone anymore, so I started doing Facebook Lives. And over the course of the 3.5 months that I was doing this, I amassed like 5,000-6,000 followers from all over the world. All over the world, I had people following me. I had people sending me, wishes, well wishes. And along with that, I started getting the other stories of the other people who have had vaccine injuries. And while my story is hard, and I'm not looking for pity, I have no self-pity. I kept a very positive attitude to the whole thing. I never had a woe's me attitude in this. And like I said, that blogging and the Facebook really helped me with that. But I started getting these stories from people, and I still get these messages from people of other vaccine injuries and other people that have had. Dr. Joel Walscott, for example, I'm here taking his place today because he couldn't make it. Dr. Walscott was an orthopedic surgeon in Mequon. And he got the vaccine, and I met with him on Thursday, and I see the similarities in what he's got. For me, Today I'm pretty stable. But there's times where, where this is my stability, where it's hard for me to hold a fork. My legs are numb. I'm numb from about mid-thigh all the way down to my foot. Part of the reason that I can't walk is because my feet, while I can move them like this, I still have no strength. And I still have, when I try and strengthen that, because I have no strength in my ankles, I have no balance. So that's why I can't walk. So I'm still waiting for all that to come back. My arms are still numb. My fingers are numb. You guys live up here. You know what it's like to get really, really cold fingers, and when they thaw out, that's what my hands felt like for about 2 months. Is when your fingers are thawing from the point where you think you're gonna have frostbite, and they're just like there's someone driving nails through your fingertips. That's what my fingers felt like for like almost 2 months. And now they just kind of tingle. They just kind of tingly and they're just numb. They just feel bizarre. But while I was doing this, I was trying to get my story out. And I was contacting news agencies. And I emailed Sean Hannity. I emailed Tucker Carlson. I emailed them all. I sent my story out to all those people and never got any responses out of them. The local news stations in Phoenix, they were really interested in my story. They were all up to report it until, it's related to the COVID vaccine? And then it was crickets. Never heard from them again. And unfortunately, all of last year, when COVID was rampaging, the money couldn't be doled out fast enough to those people that were being offset by COVID. Okay, well, they can't work. Well, now we're going to, they've got the unemployment and the benefits and yada, yada, yada. But here I sit as collateral damage of the COVID vaccine. And actually, my sister coined a phrase that I liked. I'm the vaccine's dirty little secret. I'm the vaccine's dirty little secret. And nobody wants to hear about that dirty little secret. Nobody wants to talk about the dirty little secret. So for me, who for the last almost 6 months now, I haven't been able to work, can't work, I have no income for 6 months. I don't know when I'm going back to work. I applied for Social Security disability, and because I have the CIDP, it's an automatic approval. So I will get Social Security disability, but not for the first 6 months. So I won't see a penny from that until the 24th of January. I can't collect unemployment. So basically, we've fallen from a 2-income house down to a 1-income house. I'm fortunate that I've got my family. My dad can help me with money to keep me afloat. But there's a lot of families out there that don't have that luxury. That don't have that. I had to sell my truck because I couldn't afford the truck payments anymore. Like I said, we're lucky. I got my dad to help me out. We had enough money in the bank, and knock on wood, I have a very low debt load, just my houses. So I've been lucky, but I use opportunities like this, and I want to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity. I use every opportunity I can to get the word out, to let people know, to put a face. We all hear about these people with vaccine injuries. I want to put a face on it. I am that guy. I'm that 1 in a million. Never thought I'd be that guy. I went in and, like I said, I work on the Navajo reservation a lot. I remember when I was persuaded as well by my doctor. I have asthma. Arizona's desert. We have a lot of fires. And in April, we had a lot of fires, so my asthma was really, really racked up. And my pulmonologist asked me, have you had the COVID vaccine? No. Well, you should get it. You're going to end up on a ventilator if you get COVID. He said, you're going to have a really bad time. So it was that and the res that prompted me to get it. And I remember I went to Costco, and I was sitting in the chair, and the guy was getting the injection ready, and I looked at the guy and I said, you know what? I hope I don't regret this someday. And I was thinking someday as in out in the future. I wasn't thinking 7 days later. And so that's my story. And I don't know how many people have been vaxxed. And I don't want to say I'm anti-vax, and I'm not going to say I'm pro-vax. I am the result of the vax. I guess lack of better terms.